I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. What does it take to build one of the world's top-rated social media management platforms without a single dollar of outside funding? This week on Brand, Emeric Ernoult, founder and CEO of Agorapulse, shares how he bootstrapped the company to over $20 million in revenue, pioneered ROI tracking tools for social, and carved out a powerful niche in a crowded market. We talk scaling smart, making social media actually measurable, and where attribution is headed next. That's coming up. But first, Emeric, welcome to On Brand.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me, Nick.
So I have to ask a bit about your story because, in a world, sounds like a movie trailer, in a world obsessed with VC funding, you took the harder road. What, when you were met with that kind of fork in the road, what told you to go that direction?
Yeah, well, to answer your question truthfully, I have to state two truths that are number one, 99.99% of businesses will never raise funds. So when you say in a world where it's all about funding, the reality is that the huge majority of businesses are never going to raise money, whether they don't need it or whether they will not have access to it because their business model does not allow for a VC to be interested in their business and make a 10x, 100x, 200x return on their money. So that's the first thing. And people need to keep in mind that maybe VC funded companies are the most visible or the most talked about, but that doesn't mean they're the most successful, and that doesn't mean they're the most interesting. That's the first thing. The second thing is we have tried to raise money many, many times because building a bootstrap company in a high-tech software industry is really, really hard. And I had to pay myself nothing or minimum wage for many years to be able to get there because I always have to prioritize paying employees and paying servers and paying something else but myself. And my co-founder did the same thing. So for a long time, we tried to raise money and say, please give me like $200K so I can have a living and not depend on my wife's salary, which was the case for a long time. And it didn't work because we got in the social media space too late. And so VC said, there's already this and there's already that. And what's different with you? And you're not so unique and yada, yada, yada. So it didn't work. So it was not a willful choice. It became a choice once we reached profitability in 2015. Because once I make $100K a month, I spend $100K a month. Yeehaw, I can sleep at night. Then it was a choice. Then I said, we were more and more profitable. So we were making good profit every year. And I thought to myself, do I need cash? And the main question I asked myself was, would I accelerate with the cash or do I have no clue what to do with the cash? And as long as the answer was, I have no clue what to do with the cash, I kept my equity the way it was and I didn't go through any dilutions.
So you talked a bit about not paying yourself. What was the scrappiest thing you did to keep the company alive?
That was literally that.
Probably
That was
it.
for 2 years in a row, I didn't get a salary. So I was working for free.
Yeah.
And for the next 2 years, I was minimum wage, which was $1,400 a month at the time. And just to give a little bit of context and what it meant for me when I was 20, and that's me between 35 years old and 46 years old. Let's put it this way. When I was 27, as an M&A lawyer in a U.S. law firm, I was making $17,000 a month. So that just gives context onto the kind of sacrifice it meant for me.
Definitely the scrappiest thing. You talked a bit about the timing of all of that, and as someone that has been in the space, worked in the space, kind of I feel like I've seen a lot of that history. But I do, when you mention that, I feel like there were so many social media management companies that when you said, oh yeah, there's plenty there, that sounds like an answer you might have gotten at that time, but it almost feels like I don't know enough about physics, but seems like it's like the example of something expanding and then contracting again, because I feel like things have adjusted and kind of arrived back at that point where there's really very only a few really strong, really innovative players. Is that what your take is on the landscape of social media management?
Yeah, it's a little bit more complex than that. There were so many, there are still so many, but the where they are positioned on the quadrant is different. So what happened in the early days for us is we were positioned on SMB, low end of the market, inbound, go to market. And so um, let's say 49 a month to 99 a month type of revenue, monthly payment, monthly subscriptions. That space has become incredibly crowded, and they are the dominant players in that SMB space right now are companies that didn't even existed in 2015 when we reached profitability. So we saw that space become more and more crowded, and that space has a very damaging issue. It's churn. It's the lack of retention. Like customers come in and come out, go in and go out, and you have a very, very hard time growing above a certain level because the amount of churn, the amount of customers canceling their subscription every month is so important. It's around 5-6%. It's between 4 and 6%. Let's put it this way: when you're serving SMBs. And when you are at, like, let's say 5%, when you are at 5% of 1 million, it's okay. 5% of 10 millions, it's painful. 5% of 20 millions, and it's incredibly painful because now basically every cell is catching up from the customers who left. So like you're selling and growing, not to grow but to stay even, which is really, really tough and hard for the morale, and hard for the attractiveness for new talents, and investing in R&D and all these kind of things that are easier to do when you're growing, of course. So we decided to go up market, and this up market is, you're right, there are fewer actors in there because there has been some level of consolidation, and we've had to reinvent ourselves in that new space, because obviously what we did to succeed in the early days, if I summarize it to one thing, is what made us succeed despite not having a ton of cash is that we did stuff that were unique to us and that were very useful. That uniqueness was very useful to a super focused segment of the market. And obviously, once you do that, because software is really hard to protect and patent, everybody, and if it's smart and well done, then everybody's going to copy you within 2 to 5 years, and then you have to reinvent yourself again because now you're not unique anymore. Everybody has done the same unique, smart thing that you did. Our unique thing was a social media inbox. In 2014, we were the first tool to invent the inbox light experience to get all your comments, PMs, DMs, and respond to them, which nobody else was doing. Now everybody else is doing it. Then we created this ROI measurement attribution tool, and now we're working on our next thing is working on a content creation tool. Like, how do you create content, high quality content at scale on social media, which is the game of the future? Because you probably noticed that social media is not social media anymore. It's interest media. It's algorithm media that serves you what you want to see and consume based on what you like and enjoy, and not what your friends are posting or your network is posting. And in that new game, so the what's going to make people win is different. It's a different game. So you have to play this different game with different rules, and we want to help people to win at that game, which is a very challenging thing to do.
I want to come back to this idea of interest media because I love how you just explained that. And I think, yeah, we're walking around talking about social media like it's 2008.
Yeah.
And it's not. What we're seeing is very different. But as you talked about all of the different phases, stages of the business, the one that really jumps out is going after again another example of you running down the kind of the hard road of attribution and ROI, one of marketers' biggest problems that you said about improving and answering. Does that's still even in, as marketers are looking at doing more, spending less, what we've been tasked with for the past 20 years, that question isn't going away. How is it changing attribution and ROI?
Well, it's changing for the worse.
Yeah, I was afraid of that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but it's definitely changing for the worse. Meaning the promise we had in the early 2000, when people realized that, oh, now everything's digital versus paper, billboards, everything, which is untrackable by design, by default. So now that everything is digital, we're going to be able to track the clicks, the cookies, and yada yada yada. And then what you added on top of that is that Google decided to remove all sorts of attribution from Google itself and obviously from analytics itself. GDPR, iOS 14, I think that was when Facebook decided Apple decided that you could not track what's happening. So Facebook ads and stuff became more and more challenging. So it has become even, it has gone from bad to worse. The need and the challenge and the necessity are still there, and you still cannot ignore them. Ignoring them is death sentence. So you can't ignore them, but it's become harder and harder. My approach is the following. And by the way, what I'm sharing now is not only for social media. It's for everything. Like, funny enough, on Slack last night at 11 p.m. in my bed, slacking with my Dimension person in Canada, I was asking him questions about, how do you track this? How do you measure that? I know you have a ton of branding stuff coming up. How are you going to know if it's working or not working? And his answer were, so it's still...
Yeah.
And I don't want to throw him under the bus. His answer he was not like, yeah, of course, like this, like that, easy. Though it's still hard. It's still
Yes.
shit, crap. I have to think about this. We have to put something in place. It's really hard. It's not working all the time. Our UTMs are broken here and there, like whatever it is. So my approach, I want to simplify things, because I've always, okay, Emeric said it's complicated. It's complicated. I'm not going to do it. To simplify things, there are basically 3 ways you can do that, and that are differently difficult. The first one is UTM tracking, and UTM tracking is still a mess, but it's still the only way you can attribute something to a click on a link that led to your website, that led to a conversion, that led to some kind of event that's valuable to you. And whatever that is, download, video watched, subscribe to a webinar, a free trial, whatever that is. And we all have our own things, whether you B2C, B2B, we all have stuff that we measure that's valuable to us and to our business. And that's when you do emailing. That's when you do texting, WhatsApping, whatever you do, where you send a digital message, and there's a link that's driving traffic to a place that's on your website that's going to convert them to something you want them to do. So what we did on that front is, and that's what we patented. We filed a patent for this, for our own tool, is we applied this logic of everything's UTMized. So every link is transformed into a link that can be tracked, because that didn't exist on social. Don't ask me why. It's kind of weird and stupid to me, but it didn't exist. Where it absolutely exists on emailing, you do email campaign on HubSpot, everything's tracked. Every link is 3 miles long, and you can track what's happening because there are all these parameters and question marks and yada yada yada. So that stuff, it's a very simple technology, by the way. It's been existing for more than 2 decades. It did not exist on social, so we added it on social. So when there is a link, when you're trying to send traffic back to a website property, that link has to contain a trackable parameter called a UTM parameter. And your website, and that's where things get tricky, your website has to be set up so and you've defined what are the conversion events. So you said, oh, if they watch this, conversion event. If they subscribe to this, conversion event. If they give me their email there, conversion event. And so what you use is Google Tag Manager or the equivalent technologies to tag those events on your site, on your software, on your things, so that when the traffic comes in and Google Analytics sees that traffic coming in, it knows what it does. And that's a conversion event. I'm going to count this. Where did it come from? UTM, whatever. UTM, whatever. That's the source of that traffic. Converted to that. That's the destination. That's the conversion event tracked. And then you have reports that are telling you that traffic transformed into this. Let me tell you one thing. If 10% of marketers know how to do that, it's already a miracle. That's what I learned. It's very unfortunate, but that's the thing. That's the fact. That's the truth. And when we launched this ROI measurement thing, I thought, that's amazing. That's a miracle. It's going to change everything. And then I hit a wall of marketers not knowing how to do that and not having any tracking in place, any conversion event in place. So sorry, guys, but if you're not tracking stuff, I'm not going to help you on social because it works the same as everything else. So that's the first bucket. The second bucket is, I don't know how to explain that. It's basically like, I'd say causation, or it's when, so you look at events on a timeline. We did this campaign on September 1st. We did this ad on October 20th, and we did this on November 17th. And then you look at your result. Oh, something happened on October 3rd. Oh, something happened on, so you basically look at actions and events. So what we do and what happens, what we put out and what gets in on the website. I know Gary Vaynerchuk is a huge fan of that, and that's how he measures a lot of the stuff he's doing on social media for the huge brands and customers he's working with. And usually to do that best, you try to focus your marketing activities on specific geos, on specific geographies, on states or cities, or like something that's very easy to constrain and say, okay, we're going to do this in New York for 2 months, really, really hard. And then we want to see, are the sales going up in New York in the next 2 months or not? So let's say you do a subway ad campaign, untrackable, impossible. You never know if there's a direct link to the subway ad and whatever people going to your shop and buying a macchiato. If you do that, we're only going to run this in New York City and no other cities where we have our macchiato place all over the US. You're going to be able to see if the New York sales are going up versus the San Francisco sales, the Chicago sales, and so on and so forth. That's the second way. And in digital, it's super easy to do. Run ads just targeting this state and this country and this city. So like, there's nothing easier to do than that, because you can target geographically on all social ads or even Google ads. So that's easy to do. And if you do that on social, it's a little harder. Let's not lie about this. But on everything else digital, that's the second type of, how do we measure if it works or not, that you can use. And the third one, which I'm also a big fan of, is if you have a place where people sign up or buy or whatever they do with you, you just ask this simple question, open field. How did you hear about us? Just simple sentence. How did you hear? Was it a podcast? Was it a LinkedIn? Was it LinkedIn? Was it Facebook? Was it TikTok? Was it an ad on the subway? Like, well, how did you come to us? And a lot of people say, it's not good enough. It's fluffy, and they don't remember, and yada yada yada. The thing is, they actually do remember most of the time. And what matters is not that they remember precisely or not, is that they actually remember something, and that's what you want to know. So what is it that they remember about where they heard about me that made them interested and pay attention to me and be interested in what I sell, and then came to my site and buy my stuff or subscribe to my thing or be in my community or whatever that was. And before AI, that was a very tricky thing to do, because you had to record all this unstructured text, because what most people are trying to do is they do a drop down thing like, Google and this and this and that. But then they're going to miss 50% because there are so many ways that people can hear about you that you're not going to think, that are not going to be added to that. And it's that specific blog post and that specific thing. So I think the drop down and trying to constrain the answer is it's probably a way to make it easier, but it's probably not the best way. The best way is open field and let them say whatever they want to say. But before AI, the way we did it is that we asked a VA, virtual assistant, in India, Saurabh, amazing guy, been working with us for 10 years. Okay, so Ralph, take we dump the data on him and he say, can you put them together and say everything that's Google, we've 1 0, 2 0, 3 O's, whole type of typos, like put them together, web search and Bing, put all of that into, search engine. And then everything that's referrals, that looks like a referral, put all of that into referral. If we have any information about who it's the referral coming from, add that too. So he was doing that. So we did that every 3 months. And every 3 months, we looked at the evolution. So if we launched a podcast promotion thing, we looked at, okay, are people coming to us talking about this podcast promotion thing that we've done, or zero of them are talking about it? So at least if you go from 0 people mentioned podcasts in the previous quarter, and this quarter we invested in podcasts, which is also, as you know, very, very, very hard to track. Now we have 15 people who signed up for a free trial and say podcast. Ooh, sign. You're like, it's not the absolute data that you want, because it's never going to tell you you got this exact amount of revenue from this podcast promotion investment. But you have something, you have a blip on the radar that's telling you, okay, it's not 0. There is some level of success here. Let's try to see how we can optimize, make more of it. Can we move from 15 to 30 and then 60 and then whatever it is? So those are the 3 ways to do that. And I know that now many people feel overwhelmed and say, what the hell, how am I going to do this? But I am very sorry, guys. These are the only 3 ways you can attribute anything to your marketing activities. And let me tell you one thing. A business that doesn't nail its marketing is a dead business. It's never going to grow and it's never going to become big. And I know it's really hard. And that's why the companies and the ones that succeed is because they do the hard work to understand what works and how they can make it work and how they can sort of track it within that framework to understand what works. And the reason the reason those who succeed so well is because it's so hard that so few people do it well. So try to figure it out, work it out. Don't give up too soon. Because it is so important. I advise a lot of companies that are early in early stage, and I try to help them, grow and so on and so forth. The ones that have not nailed marketing are the ones that suffer the most, because the only thing they're counting on is sweat and blood and hard cold outreach work, which is the hardest thing on earth. It doesn't scale. It's super hard for the morale. Like, you keep calling people that are rejecting you, telling you to go F off all the time. It's the worst thing in business development life. When you have marketing that makes people come to you and ask you, hey, Nick, I heard about you. It's quite interesting what you do. I'd love to know more. My God, life is so much better, right? So that's the nirvana of business development. That's where we want to go. So ignoring marketing because it feels hard because you can't track it and attribute it, and you're wondering where your money is going, and not doing it because of that is not a good idea.
So before we dive into the brand that's made you smile recently, I want to ask about what you alluded to earlier, that attribution's kind of always been at the forefront of Agorapulse, known products, benefits. Tell us about how you're going to help with brands doing the work of not social media, but as you said earlier, interest media.
So how can brands succeed at interest media and not social media?
Yeah. And what are you working on in that area?
Oh, what we are working on.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to give back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. It's a French expression. I don't know if it makes any sense in English, but it's not. I didn't coin that term. Gary Vaynerchuk did. It's the one who came up with that term, and maybe he took that from someone else. I don't know, but I got it from him. The difference between 2010 or even 2020 and 2025 and soon 26 is that in the past social media world, you had to build an audience, because in order to be viewed and seen and watched and consumed, you had to have people following you as a brand or as a person so that they could see your content in their newsfeed. That's the way it used to work. With the new era, which, by the way, was introduced by TikTok, it's not like that anymore. the algorithm is going to choose what they're going to show next to the person based on what they seem to like. And what they seem to like is going to be guessed by the algorithm based on what they've consumed in the past. So let's say I consume business content day in and day out, which I do, marketing, how to grow a business, sales, all that kind of stuff, leadership, CEOing. That's all I consume. That's all I do. Then that's all it's going to give me. Here's one more. Here's one more. Here's one more. Oh, here's a new guy you've never seen. That's pretty famous about people who like to see business content. I'm going to show it to you. Do you like it? Do you watch the whole thing? Oh, you do. Here's a second one. And oh, you watch it too. So that's how the algorithm works. It's quite easy to understand. They basically are able to understand what you like, what you enjoy by engagement with the content, how long you stay on the content, how fast you scroll, how fast you swipe up, back, right, left, whatever. That's me, next, I'm not interested. How many times you say thumb down, or that, all these signals is telling the algorithm, like it, don't like it. And that's how they give you less or more. What that means is that you can have 0 followers or 10 followers and have millions of views if suddenly you do something amazingly interesting for the very narrow audience that you are targeting. So the big difference is, in the past, you had to build a huge following to be able to build visibility on social. Really, really hard, took very, very long time. In the new time, you don't have to do that. Well, if you do that, great. It's fine too. Like, obviously, do not prevent yourself. Like, do not say, oh, I'm not going to build an audience. An audience is great. And then usually the most successful brands and influencers, they have both. They have huge audience and amazing content targeting. But what you really need to do in the new world is your content has to be amazingly interesting. And when I say amazingly interesting, I mean people would have paid to consume it if it was not free. And that's a high bar. I think we can both agree that it's not an easy bar. And I think about it every day, and I tell my team to think about this every day. How do we do that? How do we make content so freaking good that they would pay for it if it was not free? And that doesn't stop there. Wait for the end. It gets worse. That you have to do at scale, high volume. That you have to do 3 times a day on each social networks. It's incredibly difficult. And that is the challenge of this new interest media era. If you are not producing amazingly good content, nobody will care. The algorithm will never deliver your content to no one. And if you're only doing it once a week, there will not be enough for you to have the growing flywheel. It will not be enough. So it has to be high quality and high volume at the same time, which is incredibly challenging. And that is the challenge that we want to address. That is the challenge where we want to help people be basically, we want everybody to be an immense influencer in their field. And that leads me to the last piece, which is you have to pick your niche and the persona you're going to address your content to. You're going to create and craft your content for. You have to make this very, very specific, very, very small. You don't want to talk to all women between 30 and 40. That's not going to work. This is way too wide. You want to talk to women living in India, having 3 kids, and so between their 25 and 30, whatever. But the scope and the size of the niche, well, not the size, but the definition of the niche has to be super, super precise. And that's the key, because then if you could apply that to building businesses. By the way, it's the same principle. If you build a business for everyone, you fail. If you build a business for a super narrow niche, you have much more chances to win. So that's also true for your content. Because you want your content to be so freaking interesting that they would pay for it. How can you do that if there's not a very specific need you're addressing that a very specific niche of people are feeling and are going through? So these are the keys. You didn't have to do that in the previous social media world because, well, I have 3 million followers. They're going to see my stuff anyway. That's not true anymore.
Well, as you can see, you've made me smile several times throughout our conversation, but it's now my turn to get to ask you, Emeric, for a brand that has made you smile recently.
Yeah, so it's a brand and it's a person. It's a huge influencer. His name is Alex Hormozi. He's very, very well known on YouTube. And I went to Las Vegas 2 weeks ago to follow his workshop. And he was on stage, and he basically said, I'm creating all this content. And by the way, he's a master at what I've just explained. He built a 7 or 8 million followership, only interested about business on social media, especially on YouTube, in less than 4 years, which is amazing when you think about it. And the success of his business is incredible. I am in awe when I see what he's done with this, what he's done as a business, because it's a business. It's a PE fund now. It's a private equity business now. They invest in companies and they grow them and they make them better, and then they resell them, and then they make a ton of money in the process. And he was on stage and he said, I'm trying to create all this content to help you guys succeed at business so you make a lot of money. And maybe one day you come back to me and you say, hey, I've made a lot of business thanks to you. You want to invest in my company and we can grow together. That's what I'm doing this. And then he looked at us and he said, but if you don't, that's fine, because in any event, I'm going to die, you're going to die, and who cares? And I was dead laughing, which is, this is so unfiltered. At the end of the day, we human beings are so tiny, small on the scale of humanity that who cares? I want to do good. And if out of that good, you want to do stuff with me and give back, great. If you don't, you know what? Who cares? Funny fact, after having done this workshop, I went to visit the national parks. So I went to Grand Canyon and Zion and Bryce, and I saw the immensity of the age of Earth, like how old Earth was. And it made me really go back to that moment and say, yeah, we're so small, we're so nothing, that having this humorous way of looking at, yeah, life is hard, but you know what? At the end of the day, we're here for like a tiny piece of time. So who cares? And that made me laugh. So it's the last time I laughed. And obviously he's a guy, but he's also a brand, and is a brand on social for sure, on YouTube for sure. And I like the way he framed it, and it made me smile a lot. So
Awesome.
yeah, brand that are made people smile are not so frequent, not so often. So
This is true. This is true.
Question, Nick.
Where can we send folks to learn more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. LinkedIn is my place. I that's where I connect to people. I connect with people, and so when people want to connect with me, I always tell them, please add a note to your invite, because if you're Mr. No one or nobody from nowhere sending me a LinkedIn invite, I'm not going to accept it, because otherwise my LinkedIn is going to be a zoo. And I value the little bit of effort of saying, hey, I'm X, I do the, I heard you there, or
you might know me from X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Like spend it. Otherwise, maybe you're using automation software that does invite. And you know what? Life is too short for accepting those invites.
Well said. Well, we will link up to all of that in our show notes, which folks can find at onbrandpodcast.com. Emeric, thanks for being on brand with us.
My pleasure. I hope I added some value to the listeners, and that they're going to get out of this episode with one takeaway that they want to apply and get better at.
Awesome. On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.